Buck, I think that's over. I think that's done. But
What do you mean?
I think his career.
That line from 50 Cent hit even harder because not long after, young Buck spiraled into bankruptcy, got slammed with IRS debts, and even ended up in jail over probation violations. His whole career didn't just fall apart, it crumbled in slow motion. And the real reason behind everything is way darker than most fans ever imagined. From the streets to the spotlight, let's take it back to the very beginning, because Buck's come-up story is wild enough to explain everything that came after. Growing up in Nashville, Tennessee, young David Brown wasn't living anything close to an easy life. My guy was constantly bouncing from spot to spot during his childhood, from Seafright in North Nashville, to the J.C. Napier projects in the South, then to the South 7 projects. By the time he was only 8 years old, this little dude knew Nashville from east to west, top to bottom, navigating different neighborhoods and witnessing all kinds of street life that would eventually shape his entire sound. To stack some cash and help out at home, young Buck hustled every legit way he could. Pumping gas for tips, mowing lawns, washing cars, whatever would put a few dollars in his hand. Music became more than a hobby. It became his escape, his outlet, his whole dream. He started freestyling with his day one homies, battling anybody who stepped up, slowly building a buzz in Nashville's underground rap scene. Here's where things get really interesting. In Buck's early hunger for success, Buck and his boy found a BG Chopper City CD, and on the back was a phone number for Cash Money Records. These two young dudes, barely knowing anything about the industry, actually called the number with a crazy plan. They told Cash Money they wanted to book them for a show in Nashville for $5,000. Somehow, against all odds, the booking actually went through. The show didn't end up happening, but what did happen changed Buck's entire life forever.
What did happen was Buck and Lil Jimmy ended up meeting everybody at Cash Money Records. And the first thing that Birdman told Buck was to spit a freestyle for him. He put him up against Lil Wayne at that time, and they went back and forth. And that ended up impressing Birdman.
Birdman was so impressed that he immediately flew Buck out to New Orleans, ready to bring him in and possibly lock down a deal with Cash Money Records. At only 14 years old, Buck made one of the biggest life-changing decisions he would ever face. He dropped out of school entirely to chase his rap dream full. Now, we're not here to argue whether that was the right move for a kid that young, but what it does show is how locked in and determined he was from the jump. This wasn't a side hobby or some fallback option. Music was his whole world, his escape route, his shot at leaving the struggle behind for good.
Ended up coming on with them, hopefully having his situation figured out as well. But as years went on, Buck said he spent 3 to 4 years with Cash Money, and none of his music ever got released. He got essentially put on the back burner, while the other artists on Cash Money, Lil Wayne, Juvenile, BG, so on and so forth, ended up blowing up.
The only real proof Buck has from his entire Cash Money era is a quick appearance in the Big Timers' Big Ballin' music video. By 1999, Buck was fed up with the whole situation. He was watching everyone around him blow up while he stayed stuck on the sidelines. So he made the hard decision to walk away from Cash Money and return to Nashville to carve his own path. But those years weren't wasted. Buck picked up priceless knowledge about the music game and built key connections, including DJ Paul from 3 6 Mafia and Juvenile, relationships that would end up shaping his future in major ways. Back in Nashville, Buck reunited with his local crew and started grinding on his own. No major label backing him, just straight hustle and determination. On August 22, 2000, he dropped Thug Until the End with his partner DT, and something unexpected happened. The project actually charted on Billboard, hitting number 34 on the US R&B chart and number 17 on the independent chart. For an unknown rapper from Nashville pushing an indie release out the trunk, that was massive. Buck moved around $10,000 worth of units. It wasn't major label numbers, but for someone doing everything by himself, it was a real win. More importantly, it proved that his music had a real audience, and that this rap dream wasn't just fantasy, it could actually become a career.
Out of my ordeal back in the streets, I ended up getting shot in a home invasion and a robbery. Enough for me to wake up and really realize that, if this shit keep going on like this, I'm gonna either get killed or I'm gonna go to jail. And I really realized that because I was getting down for real. Really started to devote more of my time to the music game, the studio, period.
After bouncing back from being shot during a home invasion robbery, Buck made a promise to himself. No more street distractions, full dedication to the music grind. And right when he needed a lifeline, an opportunity came through one of his old Cash Money connections. DJ Paul from 3 6 Mafia, who had always respected Buck's raw talent and his pen game, heard about the shooting and reached out immediately. He sent Project Pat to scoop Buck from Nashville and bring him to Memphis to lay down some records. From those sessions came Buck's first major album placement, Memphis, on 3-6 Mafias. When the Smoke Clears, 6,661 album. This was the jumpstart he needed, the exposure that opened the door for everything that followed. Even with that look, Buck didn't end up signing with 3-6 Mafia. Instead, he returned to Nashville, grinding as an independent artist. But now, with far more visibility, connections, and real momentum. But hold up, we're getting ahead of the story. Let's get into how Buck actually joined G-Unit, because that situation alone is wild. Things began to shift when Birdman, his old plug from Cash Money, hit him up again with a new opportunity. Cash Money wasn't the same company Buck had dealt with in the late 90s. The label had exploded. Bigger offices, exotic cars everywhere. The whole machine had leveled up. Birdman wanted Buck to join a new group he was forming called Head Buses. Buck flew back to New Orleans. But history started repeating itself fast. After sitting around for nearly a week, with no paperwork, no real movement, and no clear direction, Buck's patience ran thin. He wasn't that naive 14-year-old kid anymore. He was a grown man with responsibilities, momentum back home, and no time to waste. Then fate stepped in. Juvenile walked into the Cash Money office and was stunned to see Buck just sitting there, waiting around. Juve was in the middle of his own fallout with Cash Money and made Buck an offer that would change his entire future.
We happened to pull up at the office, and when he pulled up, he was kind of shocked to see me there. I'm like, I've been here for a whole week. And he was like, man, you want to get up out of here for a minute? You know what I'm saying? And I took that ride with Juve, and that's where my career started, with Juvenile.
Buck officially linked up with Juvenile's UTP label. But here's a key detail that proves how sharp Buck was even back then. When Juvenile handed him the contract, Buck didn't sign it right away. He took that paperwork home, slid it under his bed, and never touched it again. Real talk. That's some next-level instinct. During this run, Buck dropped 2 projects, Born to Be a Thug on October 10, 2002, and a compilation with the UTP Playas on October 8, 2002. But technically, he was never officially signed. Why? Because Buck had already learned how messy the game could get. He saw Juvenile battling his own issues with Cash Money, dealing with beefs and instability, and Buck wasn't about to tie himself to another shaky situation. At one point, Juvenile even told Buck flat out, if a better opportunity comes up, take it. While touring with Juvenile, their tour bus made a stop in New York. This was 2002. When 50 Cent had the entire city on fire, the bus driver happened to know 50's former manager, Shaw Money XL, and Buck kept pressing him non-stop to connect them. Eventually, it worked. 50 pulled up on the tour bus, but he was there specifically to record with Juvenile, not Buck. While 50 and Juve locked in at the back of the bus, Buck made a slick move. He started playing his own solo tracks for Lloyd Banks and Tony Yayo, who were chilling up front. One track instantly grabbed Banks's attention. Banks grabbed the beat and brought it straight to 50 in the back. 50 liked it so much he jumped on it, and that song became Bloodhound on the iconic Get Rich or Die Trying album. Now, that wasn't technically the first track released with all 4 of them. That honor goes to a little bit of everything. On the 50 Cent is the Future mixtape, but Bloodhound was the record that introduced Buck to the mainstream audience.
A week after the deal fizzled out with UTP, 50 Cent ended up calling Young Buck and said, hey, we want that Bloodhound track. We'll pay you $20,000 for it. Let us put it on the album. And the track is getting mixed by Eminem and Dr. Dre.
50 wanted to fly Buck out to Los Angeles so he could meet with him, Eminem, and Dr. Dre, and officially sign on to G. For any up-and-coming rapper, especially someone who had survived setbacks, false starts, and disappointments, this was the ultimate dream scenario. Buck's first major placement under G-Unit Records was Bloodhound on 50's Get Rich or Die Trying album. But 50 had a plan. Instead of immediately pushing Buck as a solo artist, he decided to drop a group project first to introduce Buck to the world as part of the movement. That album was Beg for Mercy, which debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 and sold 377,000 copies in its first week. Today, it has moved more than 2.7 million units in the US and is close to diamond worldwide. Young Buck had officially stepped onto the biggest stage hip-hop had to offer. The whole hood was locked in. Following the G-Unit blueprint, Buck released a mixtape called Welcome to the Hood on May 31, 2004, hosted by DJ Who Kid, building heavy momentum for his solo debut. On July 2, 2004, the first single, Let Me In, featuring 50 Cent, dropped and peaked at number 34 on the Billboard Hot 100. Then came his moment. On August 24, 2004, Buck released his debut album, Straight Outta Compton. The results were massive. The album debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200, sold 361,000 copies in its first week, and went platinum. The second single, Shorty Wanna Ride, became his highest charting solo track, peaking at number 17 on the Hot 100. But beyond the sales, Buck did something historic. He shattered what many called the Nashville curse. becoming the first non-country artist from Nashville to break into major mainstream success. For decades, people claimed the city blocked non-country artists from blowing up, but Buck smashed that barrier wide open and paved a lane for the entire city. On November 15, 2004, at the Vibe Awards, chaos broke out, an event that would have long-term effects on Buck's career. Dr. Dre, Eminem, 50 Cent, G-Unit, and Suge Knight were all in the building. A man named Jimmy Johnson allegedly put hands on Dr. Dre, and Buck was accused of stabbing him. Buck went on the run but eventually turned himself in. After a year and a half, the case wrapped, and Buck received 3 years of probation and 80 hours of community service. Even though he escaped major consequences. This incident was the first real warning sign, the first moment showing that Buck's street instincts and loyalty could end up threatening everything. He'd built Dot in 2005. Buck kept pushing. He featured on 3 6 Mafia's massive hit Stay Fly, which peaked at number 13 on the Hot 100 and went double platinum. He also dropped an independent album to help promote G-Unit South. A Division 50 put him in charge of. Buck wasn't just an artist anymore, he was becoming an executive, building his own branch inside the G-Unit empire. Throughout 2006, Buck flooded the streets with mixtapes, setting up his next album. On February 6, 2006, he dropped Case Dismissed, the introduction of G-Unit South with DJ Drama, celebrating the end of his Vibe Awards case while showcasing the artists he was bringing up. Around this time, while Buck was working on his second album, Buck the World, serious problems started brewing between 50 Cent and their manager. Shaw Money XL50 called a meeting with the whole G-Unit roster and told them they needed new management because he was cutting Shaw Money off completely.
Money had became a best friend of mine. I'm the best man on this man's with. That's how many close Shaw was. Me and Shaw were probably closer than me and 50. But him and 50 was. So I'm the best man of this man's with. And I'm judging Shaw not from a business standpoint of his problems with 50, but looking in there as my brother.
Buck viewed Shaw Money as more than a manager, he saw him as a brother. And since Buck had no personal issues with him at the time, he believed everything between 50 and Shaw would eventually get resolved. In Buck's mind, there was no reason to suddenly turn his back on someone who had done nothing wrong to him directly. But 50 interpreted that loyalty as disrespect, as Buck choosing sides against him. From that moment, the resentment started immediately. You would see 50, Banks, and Yayo together at shows and events, while Buck and Shaw Money were left promoting Buck's project alone. Buck genuinely believes this is one of the biggest reasons Buck the World didn't reach the level of his debut album. Even though it still debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200 with 140,000 first-week sales and went gold, the singles I Know You Want Me and Get Buck didn't hit like the first album's tracks, mostly because the full G-Unit promotional machine wasn't behind him. At the same time, 50 started accusing Buck of being too friendly with his enemies The Game, Jadakiss, Fat Joe, Jim Jones, and others. Buck later clarified that he wasn't getting close to them, he was actually relaying to 50 what they were saying. But 50 saw any contact as betrayal. On top of that, 50 claimed Buck was blowing money recklessly, failing to handle taxes, and that 50 had already paid his taxes twice before the situation got too messy. By 2008, Buck learned he owed the IRS $300,000, and that debt became a massive turning point. Early 2008 was rough. In January, Buck performed at a show with Lil Wayne and Birdman, where both publicly encouraged him to leave G-Unit and join Young Money, Cash Money. Buck seemed to agree on stage, and when 50 saw the footage, it only fueled the tension. In February 2008, G-Unit dropped the mixtape Return of the Body Snatchers Volume 1, and Buck's absence confused fans, especially since they had just released Feel Good together shortly before. Then came the moment that changed everything. In March 2008, Buck and 50 had a private phone call that nobody knew was being recorded because 50 taped the entire thing. After that call, the two appeared to be cool again. Buck even showed up on songs for the G-Unit mixtape Elephant in the Sand, and for a brief moment it looked like things might finally smooth out. But the peace didn't last. On March 20, 2008, an old interview Buck had done with Yo Raps resurfaced, where he said he had never received a royalty check from G-Unit and that all his income came from show money. The interview was months old, but its release timing right when Buck and 50 were patching things up was disastrous. Shaw Money quickly tried to put out the fire, stating Buck had earned over $10 million under 50's guidance. But the damage was done. On April 7, 2008, 50 called Hot 97 and officially announced that Buck was no longer in G-Unit as a group member, though he remained signed as a solo artist. A week later, on another Hot 97 appearance, 50 revealed even more, including accusations that Buck had drug problems. Buck stayed quiet for a bit, but on May 12, 2008, he dropped my interview, addressing his removal from G-Unit and the allegations. Things seemed calm for a moment until June 15, 2008, when Buck performed live and shouted "Jit" on stage. That was the final straw. 2 days later, on June 17, 2008, 50 released the full recorded phone call where Buck could be heard crying and asking for help. The day after, Buck responded with the taped conversation, and Game jumped on the remix a few days later, even teasing a joint mixtape titled Worth More Than 50 Cent, though it never happened. When G-Unit released their second album Terminate on site on July 1, 2008, Buck only appeared on 4 tracks, reduced to almost a guest on what should have been his own group's album. Because Buck was still contractual signed to G-Unit Records, 50 blocked him from releasing an official album, forcing Buck to survive through mixtapes starting in 2009. Ironically, many fans believe 2009 Buck was the rawest and hungriest he had ever sounded, with mixtapes like Back for the Streets and Back on My Buck showing pure emotion and desperation. But while his music was strong, his personal life was collapsing. On August 3, 2010, the IRS raided his home over the unpaid $300,000. They found a gun and, because Buck was a convicted felon from the 2004 Vibe Awards incident, he was charged even though he insisted the weapon belonged to his tour manager. 3 days later, he released My Campaign addressing the raid. On August 19, 2010, he filed for Chapter 13 bankruptcy, a move that, surprisingly, allowed him to finally escape his G-Unit contract. On September 7, 2010, he released his independent album The Rehab, debuting at number 55 with 6,400 first-week sales. Then things spiraled further. In March 2011, G-Unit Records hit him with a $10 million lawsuit. In 2012, after surviving a drive-by shooting in March, he was sentenced to 18 months in prison for the gun charge. The IRS later auctioned off his jewelry, studio gear, and personal belongings. Buck turned himself in on August 6, 2012, and was released on October 2, 2013. In a shocking twist, 50 later reunited the original G-Unit members at Summer Jam on June 1, 2014. The group even released 2 EPs, The Beauty of Independence and The Beast is G-Unit, and Buck dropped his ambitious 10 mixtape series from 2015 to 2018. But legal troubles returned. In 2016, he was arrested for threatening to burn down his ex's apartment. In 2018, he dropped the banger Can't Lose and announced an album executive produced by 50 and Drive Dre, but the relationship collapsed again. More lawsuits followed, leaked audio surfaced, 50 mocked him publicly, and by 2020 Buck filed for bankruptcy again to escape the contract. After years of legal battles, he lost the case in 2023, agreeing to pay $200,690 of the $250,000 debt. He liquidated assets worth around $1.05 million, spent $445,000 on legal fees, and had roughly $600,000 left for creditors. Then in April 2025, Buck was arrested again